Good evening. We'll get started. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Crowley, the very proud superintendent of the Woburn Public Schools, and I want to say thank you to everyone that's here. I see a variety of different stakeholders, including retirees. Anyway, so tonight, the format, we have 3 people coming in, 3 candidates. The 4th withdrew today, so we only have 3 people coming tonight. You should have a clipboard. It looks like everyone does, so take notes, etc. On your way out. If you could just leave the papers in the back, that would be great, and that's how we'll gather feedback from you. It's a 30-minute segment. It's a really like a hard 30-minute segment to respect everyone's time. We have the great pleasure of having student moderators, Sindra and Liam, tonight, and they will be doing the questioning of the candidates. So at this time, I will allow them to take over. Thank you for being here again.
Yeah, we'll start with the intro and then the questions. They're very eager to ask me questions. So I just want to echo my thanks for being here tonight and how important this process is to your community. I had a great opportunity to spend the day here meeting with students and staff to learn more about Woburn High School. Woburn Memorial High School, excuse me, and I got to walk around and see students in action and learning in action. So I had a great afternoon. It's been an exciting opportunity. I just have a few slides to narrate my introduction. Really just about my leadership experience and why Woburn. So I grew up in Wakefield, right down the road. Wakefield, a little similar, a little different than Woburn. We do have a lake as well. That's very popular. You know, Woburn has a lake. That's a good start. I'm going to back up. It's a good start. I'm working out the kinks. So my name is Adam Colantoni. Thank you for that. What you have is a handout. It's just a summary of my experiences. It's not a resume. It's a summary of my experiences, a little bit of a bio just to get a sense of where I've been, what I've done in my profession. So fast forward, I grew up in Wakefield right down the road. Woburn's very familiar to me. I grew up spending a lot of time in Woburn, played a lot of sports here in Woburn against teams. Have worked with people from Woburn in different capacities throughout my career. Always thought very highly of the community. This slide is a little interesting, but just kind of on a personal note, growing up in Wakefield, my mother was petrified of getting on the highway, so she found the back roads to Woburn Mall, and for the longest time I thought this was the only mall that existed because this was the only way she knew to get to a shopping plaza. So I spent a lot of my childhood over there at the Woburn Mall. So just as you can see from the handout, I just want to highlight a few of my leadership experiences. I'm here tonight with 14 years of school leadership experience. I started my career as a counselor. High school was a really critical time in my life. I had an amazing network of adults that helped me navigate a lot of adversity and overcome a lot of challenges. Really helped pave the way for me of what I wanted to do graduating from high school. So I knew I wanted to work in schools. I set out to work in a high school to kind of be one of those adults that was there for me. I ended up finding a home in middle school, and I love middle school. I've really gotten to appreciate the different developmental challenges at the middle school age. I have a good sense of who they are when they arrive here as high school students. 2 highlights is the principal at Galvin Middle School for 6 years. Galvin's a really large school, about the same size as Woburn High School. It's the only middle school in Wakefield. It was a brand new facility when I opened it up, so I had the privilege and responsibility of really taking advantage of that and making sure our students had some really amazing learning opportunities and extracurricular opportunities. Currently, I'm in Salem. I left Wakefield pursuing some other career opportunities. I was thinking about central office as a next step in my career after 13 years doing middle school leadership. I spent a year in Salem working with the superintendent in all of the schools, pre-K up through high school last year, helping students and staff kind of rebuild sense of community with in-person learning the first year back from the pandemic. It was a great experience, a great opportunity. Really helped me, I think, become a stronger principal. But as the year went on, I really wanted to get back into a school. Central office was a great opportunity, but wasn't the pace of the day that I had really loved in terms of interacting with students and staff. So this year, the superintendent asked me to step into the middle school in Salem, the Collins Middle School. He asked me to take it over for the year. It was a school that was really struggling coming back last year from the pandemic. And so this year, we've done a lot of great work, just really operationalizing the school, creating a safer space for students, getting them back into better learning habits. Around December, I let them know I was not going to pursue staying in Salem, that I wanted to seek other opportunities, really continuing to reflect on where I see myself in this next stage of my career. And I really, at this stage of my life, want to come full circle and get back into what I set out to do and find myself in a high school leadership role. All along, when I left high school, thinking about my career, I just wanted to be a champion for students. I was lucky enough to have a lot of adults be champions for me in high school, whether it was teachers, coaches, or administrators, and I felt very blessed for that opportunity. So it's really, for me, been a life calling to really just make sure every kid or child in my school or student has someone they can identify as a champion or trusted adult. So these pictures, that's one of a picture of the Galvin Middle School, over 1,000 students, really believed in community and bringing students together. And those are just me with other students that I've had some personal connections with over the years. So the leadership style that I've developed throughout the course of my career is really blending my personal core values with my leadership values, all leading towards student outcomes. So as a leader, I try to show up each day and lead with integrity, with a growth mindset of continuous improvement of my practice. As a school leader, I really try to promote really clear, consistent, strong communication. As family members and parents and staff, we're living in an age of just constant information that's always going out. So I really work hard to make sure the school community is all on the same page, everyone has the same information. Believe really strongly in collaboration and partnerships. I believe strongly that we have to work together with families to provide the best experience possible for students. I always tell students in my school that at the end of the day, when you go home, you still represent our school, and we still have to work together with families to make sure that happens. For leadership priorities within a school, what I'm really passionate about is student voice and student engagement. I saw a lot of that today and heard a lot of that today from students. Believe very much in equity, making sure students and staff get what they need. And then student learning outcomes. I want to make sure by the time students graduate, they're fully prepared to enter the next stage in their life. So why Woburn? As I've started to look at opportunities, again, I'm very familiar with Woburn. I feel like Woburn is a community that I know well, but also looking at your district strategies and learning a lot about the work that Woburn's doing, I felt a lot of alignment in my own personal work, my own personal values and professional values. What jumped out at me are the goals around equity, collaboration, and deeper learning. I think we have a really great opportunity coming back from the shutdown of the pandemic to really redefine a lot of things for students in schools. I think we're in a great moment in time to look at these really important concepts around collaboration, equity, and deeper learning. Also, Woburn, to me, what I really love is the diversity of the student body. Tanner Pride really jumped out at me today in talking to students. And again, I just know I've always had a deep respect for the community. In your vision statement, something, again, I've read a lot of statements, but something that really resonated with me was this one sentence. Our students are diverse and resilient with a strong sense of community who are inspired to create change in the world. That really resonated with me and led me to learn more about what Woburn's doing for work, and it helped me apply for the process. And that's it. So now I'm going to turn over to our wonderful MCs to ask some questions.
Can you share about yourself and why you're interested in being the next principal at Woburn Memorial High School?
All right, I think I got a head start on those slides. But again, a little bit about myself. I graduated from Wakefield High School. Just through life events and support I had as a student really led me to wanting to become an educator. The best path I knew was to become a counselor, and I was encouraged early on in my career to get into an administrative program. I did so, and at an early stage of my career, I had the opportunity to become an assistant principal, and then principal, and here I am. I think I tried my best to articulate why Woburn, but spending time today here, each conversation I had, the questions were really thoughtful, passionate, and it's clear to me that people are very committed to the students here in Woburn.
Can you tell a story or stories about how you successfully engaged and supported high need students both in and out of school.
Yep. So throughout my career, when I think of equity, I really want to make sure that all of our students and families have access to resources and opportunities. In Salem, the school I'm at, 70% of the students qualify as high needs, which means they're either on an IEP, they're an ML student, or they come from a low-income household, or any combination. And so I've been very mindful this year, particularly in terms of what type of supports students and teachers need in the classroom for successful experiences. Been able to create schedules where teachers can collaborate with different resources in the school to support the needs of students. Outside of school, just really making sure that our families know who to access for what when they need things. Tonight, for example, for any of our families where Spanish or Portuguese is a first language, just wanted to make sure that my handout was in a native language. So just really thinking about personal experiences for people and making sure that that family or that student is being planned for whenever we're hosting an event or planning an event. And so to me, that's really something I'm passionate about. Another reason why is my wife is a former ML student herself. And so she at home is always in my ear to make sure that I'm advocating for students in my school. My wife moved here from Brazil about 20 years ago, and she learned how to speak English. And she's one of the biggest advocates I know for people in terms of English not their first language.
Specifically, how do you engage with marginalized families to support their students?
So similar to some of the examples I just gave, I want to make sure that families in the community know who they can reach out to. I want to make sure families in the community know who their go-to people are. I want to make sure any information that is being put out to communities, that it's in a language that families can understand. If we're hosting events, that there is a translator that would be there if needed. Anytime I've met with families at the school, I make sure that there's a translator at the meeting. Really just individually accounting for each family's experience in the school community and making sure that they feel welcomed, included, and have a voice.
What does a safe learning environment look like?
A safe learning environment, I think of a few pieces. One is physical safety. I think our school campus needs to feel safe for students and staff. And so really talking about that as we launch a school year, what it means to have a safe campus in terms of people wearing their badges, sign-in processes to the building, what type of environments we want physically. More importantly, I think, is the social and emotional safety in a school, that everyone feels like they're welcomed in the school community, that the classrooms are a safe space for students to engage in their learning. From my experience, if students are not feeling socially, emotionally safe, they're not in a position to learn in the classroom. So for me, a safe learning environment means we're all working on common goals of creating spaces that are safe, inclusive, welcoming. We're practicing any routines as a school in the event that we have to leave the campus, that we have any emergency situations. So when I think of safety, I think of a whole range of scenarios that come up. And it's something that I take really serious in terms of setting expectations at the beginning of the year with students and staff.
What does high quality instruction look like?
High quality instruction to me looks like meeting learners where they are at. I believe in the concept of productive struggle. High quality instruction, we don't want to over scaffold for students, meaning we don't want to do the heavy lifting. We want to develop independent learners. And so high quality instruction to me means that we're designing lessons that are engaging, relevant, meaningful, that have entry points for all learners in the classroom. If it's an ML student, we're creating scaffolds in the classroom where they have entry points to engage. So high quality instruction to me really goes back to the planning that goes into a lesson around accounting for all the different needs. And then really just ensuring that there's high levels of engagement in student discourse.
Can you describe what you look for when hiring staff at your school?
Hiring staff at my school, what I look for. So look for a lot of things. One, this past year, I really made a very intentional effort to try to hire staff that reflected our student demographics, to try to diversify our staff. So really being purposeful in how we recruit staff and how we think of our questions in the interview process. Also, I want to make sure that people that we're hiring have the same core values that are aligned with what our school's core values are. And so one of the most important questions I'll ask in an interview is, what are your core values? Because I want to get a sense of what type of adult I might be hiring. Actually, the single most important thing I've learned as a principal is who you hire to put in classrooms with children. Because at the end of the day, that's the greatest impact, are the teachers in the classroom with students. And so my look fors can really range depending on what we're hiring for. But I certainly want to try to make every effort to diversify our staff, to make sure we're finding staff that are aligned with our core values, our vision, our mission, and that have a growth mindset. Teaching is really demanding and hard in 2023, and I want to make sure that we're hiring staff that are committed to continuous improvement.
How do you shift the climate towards a more positive culture for both students and staff?
It's a big question, shifting the climate to be a more positive one for students and staff. So I think through our day-to-day routines and rituals as a school, how we articulate what's important to us, how we follow through on that, how we have some collective accountability around our core values as a school. I look for opportunities to celebrate accomplishments, to highlight the things that are going well in a school, look for opportunities to reset expectations when needed. If we set a course where these are our goals as a school and we're not meeting them, we need to come together and talk. As a leader, in terms of setting the tone of a building around climate, I'm always looking to build relationships with students and staff. I'm one that you would see out in the school most of the day. I'm one that you'll see taking every opportunity to connect with someone to learn about how things are going in their life. And I want people in my school community to feel valued, heard, and included in part of any vision that we're developing. And from my experience, when all those things happen, although we may not always agree on things, the climate starts to shift when people feel like they're part of the movement of what we're trying to do. Wow. All right, that's all we have for questions.
So you have maybe about 10 minutes. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the folks here tonight?
Yeah, and I'd be happy to, I don't want to go too off script, Dr. Crowley, but I'd be happy to take a few questions from the crowd that maybe wasn't addressed tonight. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kristen. I'm a parent of a sophomore at Woburn High. And my question is, I feel like after years of the children were remote, that they sort of lost a sense of community. Like, what could you do to sort of build that community back at the high school?
I appreciate that question. I heard a little bit of that today in the student group that I spoke to. They felt, some of the students had reported that even when there's efforts to circle up and build community, not all students are engaged in the conversation. So I really do think we have to be intentional about how we're helping rebuild students' social and emotional skills in terms of how they build relationships, how they put themselves out there. I do worry about the developmental loss of social skills for students the last few years. And so I think building community and interpersonal skills is like anything else, through practice and repetition, providing the space and opportunity for students to do that in safe ways too. Sometimes students are afraid to interact in a social setting because they just haven't had the opportunity to do so. So for me, building community is about celebrating who we are, coming together to celebrate who we are. At the Galvin Middle School, we'd bring the whole school down here to celebrate things. So I think kind of creating a unified school in terms of our core values, our mission, our vision, celebrating students at reinforcing those, right? Telling our story about our school in a really positive way. And just really, as a principal, just being mindful that you do set the tone for the community. And so for me, I like to model that for students of what it means to be part of a community.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out and enduring this. My name is Siobhan Curran. I have 2 daughters at Woburn High School. One's graduating this year. So you talked a lot about core values, and you gave some examples of bringing the community together and things like that. Can you give us an example of what that would look like? Just not in generalizations. Like, what are some of the activities or things you would do?
Yep, and I'm not enduring. I'm enjoying this opportunity. I'll give you an example. The first day and last day of school, I always bring the entire community together to celebrate the opening of school and to celebrate a successful school year. But just sometimes we forget how big our school community is when we're not all together. And so just one small example is I always build in time the first day and the last day to make sure we open and close well as a community. And I really emphasize that when the whole community is together. Literally ask people to look around the room and say, this is our community here. So that's one opportunity. Look for strategic times throughout the school year to build community in smaller ways throughout the school. Look for ways to involve the community into the school. One of the proudest accomplishments that we created at the Galvin Middle School was a student-led showcase. And students would bring their families in the spring and walk their parents, grandparents, sibling around the school, kind of an open house style to show off their learning. But what it really created was this great community vibe of learning. And students were so excited to show off their artifacts. And that was probably one of the most successful events of the school year, was this community-style student-led showcase. And so community isn't just about the people in the school, it's about how we're engaging families as part of that process so they can support the work that we're doing in the school. On a small scale level, one of the pieces that Wubin's working on that I've had a lot of experience the last few years is creating communities through circles. And so restorative practices and restorative circles is something that I've been trained on and that we've implemented this year in Salem to help build community. There's a lot of ancient civilizations that use circles to build community, and it's a way to get to know each other. It's a way to hold accountability to each other. And so on a small scale, just circling up is something we do all the time. If there's something that happened that violated our core values as a school, or something in the classroom that happened, I really want teachers to circle up and we need to talk about it. We can't just move on like something happened. So not just celebrating, but also hitting the timeout button to talk about things that are not okay. And I think when kids see us hit the pause button to talk about things like that, they appreciate that we recognize and we're going to slow down and talk about things.
Hi, thank you. My question is, there's been a lot of transitions at the high school with different changes in leadership. I think it has impacted morale and predictability. How would you go about taking care of that? There's a lot of, I think, this is such a large building. There's a lot of different stakeholders in the building and outside of the building with a lot of competing interests. How would you go about coming in another transition time? How would you plan on managing that? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great question. So if I were to have this opportunity, I would certainly leverage time this spring and this summer to get a head start on meeting the community, doing a lot of listening sessions. That came up a lot today as well, is how do we kind of rebuild a sense of community amongst the staff. And it does take time and healing, and it takes intentional effort. And so for one, I would want to commit to being here so that people would put their trust that we're going to do this hard work of coming together. And then I think you have to find representation throughout the building that that can support the voices of everybody and bring people together. Really identify what are the barriers that are getting in the way of us feeling like a community, and just being really intentional about that and being relentless. I think being a community really involves a constant mindset, not just an event once in a while. And so the way we communicate, with each other, with different stakeholder groups, I think is really important. And so I don't think it's a quick fix, but I think if it's a priority and it's something that we can start to build some consensus around what our most important things are to come back together, that would be it would be learning through the staff what are our priorities in terms of coming back together.
Do you have anything for us? Closing
Uh,
remark?
Yeah, I've really appreciated this opportunity today. I was so impressed with the students that I met with earlier today, with our MCs. What excites me about the opportunity to work at the high school level is just the quality of conversation is very different. The maturity, the life goals that students have. Again, kind of coming full circle to my own experience in high school being such a critical time. I would be so excited to be able to walk these halls and support our students and staff and just help achieve the vision and the goals of Woburn Public Schools. So thank you for being here tonight. I know I'm competing against March Madness, so you're all dedicated to Woburn Public Schools. You get points. Thank you.
Again, candidate, Assistant Principal Meg Patrici. Ms. Patrici.
Thank you. Can I start off just my slides and then we'll go over the questions? Okay. Well, first off, I want to thank everyone for being here because I know everyone's busy this time of year. And I appreciate the time you're putting into a very important process. It's an honorable position that you're hiring for. So I'm glad to see all the faces here. You will hear me say the word I a lot tonight. I'm not an I person if anyone knows me. I'm just not. But as you know, interview process, you have to say I a lot. So I know that for my own self, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to make a positive school. So here we go, Abby. So my personal life, a little timeline. First off, I was class in 1992. I actually see a fellow alum in 1992 over there. I was born in Woburn. I actually still reside in Woburn. I'm the 4th generation, my grandparents, my parents. And as you can see, my daughter graduated in the class of 2022 from Woburn High School. In 1996, I went to Keene State, got an AS, a BS. I went on, I got a master's in special education, and then I went on to get an ed leadership certificate. And I've been married to my husband, Joe, for nearly 25 years. Next. My professional timeline. In 1996, I actually was earned a job. And I started off at Woburn High School, and then I moved on to Joyce Elementary School. Then it was an elementary specialist. Went on back to the high school. Used my role. I did a lot of coaching. And I really have been on like a 27-year interview, if you think about it. I've impacted 9,000 students, approximately. I didn't count them all as they started, over the years. And I've been really happy in my role, and I come into my school happy every day. Currently, I am obviously the assistant principal. I've been here since 2014. I have been assigned to various grades, but I've worked 9 to 12 all the way through my tenure. Abby? So school culture and climate. To me, it's Tanners helping Tanners every day, whether it's helping them find their schedule, helping them, get through the hallways, helping them find guidance. One of probably the most proudest initiatives, the proudest initiative I've done, again with a team, is our Thanksgiving basket. It doesn't sound like much, but we've serviced over 300 families over the years. And what happens as a school, we identify families in need, whether it's medical, emotional, financial need, and we turn them into a number. And then we reach out, and I put a spreadsheet out, and families, departments, teams, clubs, activity, administrations all sponsor a family. And then right during our homecoming week, which is a really great time to celebrate Tanner Pride, we have all of these groups come in and collaborate and build these beautiful baskets. And then our administration team, along with a couple of staff members from the Tanner Closet, deliver it to the homes. And we got all different places. We've been to hotels, scatter houses, all over the place. And it's really a rewarding moment. It makes everyone feel good, and it's really, we're all doing this together. Next slide, Abby. So service. As you can see, I have a lot of community connections. Being in the town for nearly 50 years, you build those. As a public educator, I just think it's our job to serve our community, the community we live in. And probably a couple of more proud moments I have is our PE leadership, which is an established program for probably 10 years now. Back when Carla was the head and the director of the Boys and Girls Club of Woburn, we wrote a grant and we were able to procure a van, monies, and basically we developed a program that took our high school students the beginning part of the day, brought them over as mentors really to our elementary students. We gave a service to families that needed to drop off early for free. We got kids exercise, free food, and really our high school students were able to decide whether they wanted to go into education or not. It was a good precursor, which now is really a NEASC or a profile of a graduate requirement to kind of feel out where you want to go in life in high school. Also, I'm a part of the Woburn Dollars for Scholars because I was given back to in 1992. I feel the service to give back to my community as they did to me. I'm part of a Woburn Educational Foundation, the Hall of Fame, and you can read the rest. Okay, next up. Transition programs. I do have a passion for transition programs. I feel like it makes me happy when students from 8th grade going into 9th grade feel comfortable and engaged before they walk in the building the first day with these big 20 to 21-year-olds in a huge building with 1,300 students. So I've worked really hard to make sure that there are programs in place. One of them, I'm not sure if you were able to attend last night or even had to, was Future Tanner Night. I thank the people that keep that program going and organize that. The other programs that I'm really proud of are our service learning programs that were over the summer to help with transition. And 2 of the capstones out of that were the Tanner Closet, as I had mentioned before, and also the Green Team. Those are 2 of my passions, serving people that need things, which is food and clothing, baseline needs, and also our environment. We basically have a Green Team that's volunteer teachers that show up and they gather students and they recycle all the materials from teachers throughout the whole building on Fridays, which is pretty awesome. Next slide. So our marginalized and diverse populations, the big word in education right now is removing barriers, but I've always felt in my career that you can remove a barrier, but really it's building a bridge too, and giving access to them. A couple of things I'm really proud of is that our ML group didn't have a leader for a few years, and that is such a marginalized population, and they needed a voice and some organization and then to know they're cared about. So I volunteered to be a department head for that on top of my assistant principal role. I learned a ton about their needs, the data behind them, and how to service them to make it the best environment we can at Woburn High School. I also work with women empowerment. A girl inspired me, it really was me inspiring the girl. And she wanted hygiene products for free in all of our bathrooms. And I said, let's do it. So we kind of gathered it up and I talked her through the process, and that now is a thing at Woburn High School, which is really great that it was student initiative, and then we were able to work through the process. Simple things on my day-to-day, like FAFSA for those first-gen students. I have been many students' mothers many times, where I help them through FAFSA. I mean, looking at the software like that or the program and getting overwhelmed as a parent that may not have been in education before or been in the United States before. So I've been the mom many a times. The Seal of Biliteracy, which is run by Catherine Escobar, one of our department heads, is fantastic. It's celebrating our students that are bilingual, trilingual, and showing their strengths and awarding that. We've also done some seed training as a district where we learned about the systematic structures in place that kind of give the biases in our own culture outside and inside of Woburn High School. So we've done a lot of learning this year. Next slide. Restorative practices. I really embrace restorative practices before it was like the thing. Right now it's restorative practices, restorative circles, restorative justice. These are things that I've always instilled in me. I feel like that things happen at a school of 1,300 students. Things that maybe we're not proud of, but every negative you have to turn into a positive, and not only a positive, but a learning experience. So I've always embraced things like incentive plans and buybacks to make them recognize what maybe they did was not great, and we're learning from it. And this year I've developed a restorative template. So when we have discipline issues in school, they have a template to go through that has an educational piece, a community piece, and actually a written word, a little bit of a, kind of reflection of what they've done. Next slide, please, Abby. Obviously, in a school of 1,300 kids, discipline happens, and there's high-level discipline. I always follow policy and procedure. I'm big on the DESE follow-through for many reasons. Number one, it's good for the student and the family. It's clear, it's transparent, and number two, it's by law. I always communicate, I always follow through, and I make sure that the family understands and the student understands what the process is. And sometimes discipline can be real high level, and every student is guaranteed the right to an education, but it doesn't have to run high if we feel like it's a safety or it's egregious in a manner that is out of our hands. I've always dealt with high level discipline. I've done Title IX, I've done civil civil rights investigations, I've done bullying, safety plans, supportive measures, all pieces of the discipline process. Next one. Initiatives. So these are initiatives that I kind of took on outside of my role of AP. They really reflect on the school report card, which your school report card really, as a resident, really determines things like home pricing, funding for your schools in your city. So when you have a school report card, there's different indicators, one of them being MCAS. So I kind of took over that role as a coordinator, and I managed MCAS to make sure our data and our students were getting the best testing environment they can. I worked with access testing, which is our ML students. It levels them for their their curriculum at Woburn High School. And you know, I've dug into different initiatives outside of my role, not just my assistant principal role. Next up are large-scale operations. As I said to you, Woburn High's big, 1,300 students, 130 staff approximately on a day-to-day. I've dealt with graduation, district initiatives where I supported technology. I've done different signups. I've set up logistics. Safety's number one in my books all the time. But you know, you look at it, it's one of my strengths. I feel like you put me in a building with 1,000 people and we can get them all managed. It comes from my background. If anyone knows a phys ed teacher, those are the people that are logistically strong. Okay, next up. Data analysis. Way back, I shouldn't say, it wasn't that long ago, we were put at level 3. And I was like horrified as a community member and also as a teacher. And so what I did was I did a deep data dive into what are the indicators that made us level 3, looking at subgroups, looking at our EWIS, EDWIN, which is a bunch of acronyms that maybe you don't know what they are, but they're all indicators on the leveling of the state, and they're important. So I did realize through all that deep data dive that data is important. If your data is not correct, it's not going to reflect the school that you have, and we have a pretty awesome school. So on my day-to-day, again, outside of my work, I really look at the SIMS, EDWIN. EWIS is my favorite. It's an early warning indicator system, which identifies students that are at risk of dropping out. If you put interventions in early for those students, you really can change the trajectory of their education. So I'm pretty passionate about the EWIS data. Also, I want to mention one thing, sorry, Abby. The informal data. People laugh, data's great and all of that, but the informal data, you see, I'm sure the kids see me come in the morning and I stand in that foyer, everyone thinks they're sitting there chit-chatting. That's a way to really gauge the tone and tenor of your building, and are those students coming in happy? Do they have smiles on their face? Are their shoes wet? Are they fed? So those to me are the informal data pieces that are so important that sometimes we forget, but I know our administrative team, that's number one in our book. Next up. This is my pretty matrix. So I tried to attach it to the vision. The district has spent a lot of time talking with stakeholders in order to identify the 3 buckets that they look in. And they have a great multi-year plan on different initiatives that are going in. So I kind of looked at it, the things that I feel like being in the building for such a long time, that I think are important as the principal coming into the role. NEASC is really important. It really determines whether you're certified through the state or not. I've worked a lot with the initiatives in NEASC. Scheduling is probably my most passionate. I was on the scheduling committee with Principal Norton in 2008. I was on the scheduling committee with Principal Finnegan in 2012. I was on the scheduling committee with Principal Callanan in 2021. And now I'm on the scheduling committee now. And sadly, the schedule we're using now, I used in 1992. So we're ready for change. Education has changed. Our initiatives have changed. The way kids learn changed. The way teachers learn has changed. Teachers teach has changed. We need time in our day. We need a different platform to be able to deliver the material, the different types of curriculum that we have. Thanks, Abby. So I look at school climate. It's kind of like the scarlet letter at this point. I feel like that we've gone through a lot as a school and a district over the years. And I feel like I'm an authentic person. What you see is what you get with Meg. Not much different. And I just feel like I feel the supportive staff and my qualities here. I have to put my glasses on for this because I'm over 40. So my foundation is always relationships. I feel like, again, I feel the love a lot from staff because I put in the time. And I always make sure I listen to them and attend to their needs as well. I'm accessible. I'm there all the time. Even when you don't want me there, I'm there. I live right down the road. I work hard, but what I've learned over the years is how to work smart, how to really balance your life. I'm pretty calm. I smile a lot. Even when I'm not sure if I should be smiling, I smile because as the leader of the building, you set the tone. And if you're not smiling and you're not calm, your staff, your students don't feel safe. So that's really important to me. Communication, you got to do it. You got to communicate the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's also transparency. What's going on in the building, even the good, bad, and the ugly, you have to talk about. So I feel like with my authentic personality and my core values as a leader, I feel like I'd make an instant impact to school culture and climate. This kind of wraps up. I'm going to flip one more slide. I have my QR codes if you want to look at my resume, but you have a paper copy and then also my slideshow. But I've been blessed as an administrator to walk into the building that I love, with people I love, with students I love. And I took my role as assistant principal really seriously, and I always assisted the principal. That was my job. I'm ready right now to lead my own building, and I'm a Tanner, so that's it.
Can you share about yourself and why you're interested in being the next principal at Woburn Memorial High School?
Slide 2. No, I mean, you know a lot of it about me through my slides. Why am I interested in the job? I mean, why wouldn't I be? It's a natural progression of my career. I've been a staff member. I've been a teacher for years. I know what it's like to have 26 kids in front of you and they all want your attention, and they all have a special needs. So I've been in your classroom spots. I've also made it through the department head position. I'm up to assistant principal, so it's a natural progression to go into a leadership role, and I'm ready to lead.
Can you tell a story or stories about how you've successfully engaged and supported high-need students, both in and out of school?
Yes, that's one of my passions. So high needs students, I'm just going to bring up the program PEAK because that has a lot of our high needs program. That's our therapeutic, and also our alternative ed kind of blended into one. A simple story is I wrote a grant in conjunction with the Woburn Fire and Woburn Police with Target Corporation, and we procured a bunch of money. And we had students there that were in need. It was probably one of my most fun days. We got on a bus, we fed them, and we went to Target, and it was like a shopping spree, right? And so at the end, we're sitting there, we have students with policemen, police and fire, chit-chatting up with their carts, running around, asking what they need, and the needs were vast. We had people getting cat food, to people trying to buy jewelry for their grandmother, to them just getting essentials like shampoo and conditioner. And then after that, they walk out with bags, and we're like, oh no, how are we gonna get all this home? They take the bus. So of course, we do home visits. We deliver all that stuff to home, so it was a pretty awesome experience for our high needs kids, and those little relationships and knowing that they're cared about when they walk in that building will pay forward for the next 4 years you're with them.
Specifically, how do you engage with marginalized families to support their students?
Yeah, so marginalized families, as I said before, I work directly with our ML students, but not only that, our women, our students of color. I just feel like the barriers in their way, I try and remove them, and I try to make sure that they're cared about. Probably one of my really fun moments in my career too is when I convinced the whole EL program to go to one of our dances. It was way back, our numbers were a little smaller, and I just said, you have to come in and experience a dance. I mean, they come from Guatemala, some of them, and coming over, and they've never been to a dance. They started off against the wall. We also dressed them. We made sure they got clothes to the Tanner closet, all that. And they finally, at the end, were dancing. They loved it. Some left. Some were like, this is not my thing. And they left. So that was a pretty awesome moment for marginalized populations. The other thing is, one of my happiest things is during the pep rally, when you have students that come in from another country, and you give them a Tanner Pride shirt, they have no idea what Tanner Pride says. They don't even know. But they're there, and they're psyched. They're wearing orange, and they're part of our community. So, those are two simple, foundational things that builds a relationship with a marginalized population, engages them early in the school, and makes them feel part of Tanner Pride.
What does a safe learning environment look like?
Well, a safe learning environment within a classroom, I feel like when you go into a classroom, first off, is the teacher there? Are they smiling? That's a simple, informative way to feel like you're accepted. Usually at the door, they're waiting, how was your day? They know you on a personal level. But when you walk in, I feel like the expectation should be set for a classroom. We have your rules, your expectations, agenda, and they know what's going to happen in your class. When you go into an environment where the expectations aren't set, it's an automatic unsafe educational, unsafe physical environment. So I guess the routine and the expectations should be set up as long as also with what you're doing in the classroom.
What does high quality instruction look like?
So it looks different in every single classroom. I love going into classes where you go in and it's noisy. It's noisy, and that's okay. Noise is okay. Structured chaos is okay. That means kids are engaging, they're enjoying the curriculum, they're feeling less vulnerable where they can talk in class and they can talk with their staff members. Their teacher. I also feel like when you see a student that's involved in a project and you're seeing the different levels, because in a classroom, you know, there are kids there that you're high flyers and kids that just need a part that are learning from the high flyer. So when you see the kind of that slant intervention where you're in a lab and a student's filling the beaker, one person's doing a prediction, the other one is running the experiment, and they're all chatting away with the teacher just guiding them through the process, I feel like that's high learning.
Can you describe what you look for when hiring staff at your school?
Yeah, I look for diversity. I mean, diversity in a lot of different ways. When you look at someone, are they diverse? And also the diversity of their interests. One of my favorite questions to ask are, okay, so you're a science teacher. What else do you do? I mean, what else can you bring to our school? I look at someone like a Coach Sullivan, because I see Cindy is on the basketball team. Coach Sullivan's a great business teacher, but he also brings that piece as a coach. Right? And you come in, he knows the subject, and he brings that extra level of engagement that they know they have a friend there, a coach, a mentor, as well as an educator. So when you get that multifaceted educator, you want to scoop them up. You know, and you also want to make sure that your staff looks like your students, right? If we all came in here and we're all, they'll look like me, white men, Irish, white women, Irish, it wouldn't be good because we have students that can't connect with those people. So I know it's a big push for everyone to get diversity. It's really hard to get. But I think hiring a person and then retaining them is the most important part. Making them feel part of your community and making them feel like they want to be there every day. It's the best 8 hours of their day. So those are the things I look for.
How do you shift a climate towards a more positive culture for both students and staff members?
Yeah, the foundation of any good functioning business, family, school is relationships. And know that everyone here is human, and when you listen with your whole body. You listen and you know that person, you care about them. So I think just having that, and I feel like I've done a nice job with that, is getting kids engaged and knowing they're cared about every day, and being that friendly face, and know that they can come over to you in the cafeteria or in the front lobby, anywhere. Email, I have kids texting me. So I just feel like knowing that you're open and you are ready to engage and that they're cared about, I think that's important to build culture up. And then goodness happens. You add in the good, the negative goes out naturally. It's like when you add in an apple into your diet, the Oreo might go out. So that's kind of like the same thing with as far as your school culture. Add in the good, the bad will go away. That's it. Thanks, Liam and Cindy. I appreciate it.
You have maybe about 5-7 minutes. I can turn it to the audience for questions, or
Sure.
do you want to?
I feel like I said my piece, but I'm happy to answer anyone's questions.
Hi, Meg. I'm Wayne Altman, and I'm a Woburn neophyte. I've only been here about 16 years. And I understand Woburn that is very much a neophyte. And I'm very familiar, though, with Tanner Pride, and very much enjoyed the basketball run of the girls' team that we just got to enjoy. And it's very clear to me the Tanner Pride in the sports in Woburn. When it comes to academic rigor and accomplishment, I don't see as much Tanner Pride. Maybe I'm missing something, but I haven't seen it as much as I've seen it in the sports. And am I missing something, or is there room for improvement there, and how do we get there?
Dr. Altman, good point. nothing's perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, right? So I look at, you're talking about rigor in the classroom. I look at the past 5 years. It's been a little crazy, okay? I feel like there's some gaps in learning. So sometimes it's hard to get into a group of honors level students that have missed these sections of curriculum. I would give that to teachers. The other thing is we're transitioning to a new style of curriculum. We went from a UDL, we're going to PBL, we have Atlas, so there's a lot of moving parts to our everyday, and I think if you see it, you look at the vision of the schools, I feel like you're going to see that increase, as I say, add in, as we move through the years. We have a lot of grants, pathways to knowledge, and we have other things that are happening as far as like the NEASC stuff and profile of a graduate that you're going to start to see implemented as we go. Even now we have the educational internship that we're kind of weaving into, and you're going to see connections where you saw we have dual enrollment. You'll see a lot more of that to try and get those kids to experiment with different types of learning, education, and interests before they exit Woburn High, instead of going into college and then switching your major halfway through, or experiencing electrical school before you go, or carpentry, and you can go right into a trade. So yeah, there's no such thing as perfect, but we're getting there. We're starting to align. We also have a lot of money been put up in the top as far as with curriculum that you'll see coming through too.
Hi, Megan. You obviously have an advantage as an internal candidate, and you did a very good job of articulating all the value you can bring from that perspective. But as an internal candidate, what might be said is you don't bring a fresh perspective. Could you give an example of how you will bring a fresh perspective to the district? As you know, that would be the one thing people might look for that an internal candidate can't bring.
Sure. So I definitely have home court advantage. We always want the home seed when you're in a tournament, and I understand that. And I can understand saying, why would we want something else? But I can say, this hire here, this will be the third principal in 3 years, possibly. That's a lot of change. I feel like that my energy, my staff buy-in, my understanding of the culture and what could be areas of growth right now, I think that's an advantage as well. I think coming in, we need to kind of stabilize. Coming in, they have to learn everything. And I'm not saying anyone's capable of learning anything. We've had many principals come in and do that. But I just feel like right now I have a lot of staff buy-in. I know where the areas of growth are and where our areas of strength are. We have some great people here and great students. So yeah, so my fresh perspective is really a fresh perspective of being a veteran Woburn person and veteran administrator. I have ideas. Every place I've gone, every role I've taken, I look at it and go, that could be better. How are we going to do that? I mean, even last week I went to a language acquisition team meeting. I got invited to LAT. I'm like, what is LAT? Are we doing pull downs? Like, what is this? And they're doing a cultural night, and I looked at that and said, that could be better. We could make passports. We can, make it so it's a little challenge. So I just feel like no matter what I am, experienced in Woburn or a veteran in Woburn, I feel like I always bring a fresh perspective. It's just my personality. Thank you. There.
Hi, my name's Eric. My daughter is a junior here at the high school. As someone who's been here at the high school and the only candidate that's been here at the high school, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the school? And as a principal, what might you change or improve upon to get through those challenges?
Yeah, so we have challenges, as every school does, around the district and around the state. And I think a lot of people are struggling with what we're struggling with, and I feel like attendance is a big issue, and accountability around that, and just being accountable to classes. So the word accountability is huge. I feel like I have a lot of ideas for attendance and how to pull that in, rein it in. I also have a lot of connections with professional organizations to see what's worked for them and what hasn't worked for them. So accountability overall, accountability for behavior, accountability to class, accountability to finish homework or do your assignment on time. I feel like that's one of our areas of growth, and I feel like across the state, maybe across the country at this point, because it was just such a fractured past few years. So I do think that I can bring some of those things as a leader and get some buy-in from staff. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Maybe one more?
Hi. My question is, how do you plan to deal with the closures of bathrooms throughout the school day and, help out with the overall safety of students?
I agree. I think that's Megan back there. Is that Megan? Megan Gamley. So I agree. As a student, you walk out of your class and like, oh, closed. Oh, you go to the next wing over, closed. It's a pain. But as administration, we have to control those bathrooms. I believe there's 36 bathrooms in the building. So imagine trying to manage all of those bathrooms on a safety perspective. It's near impossible. So sometimes, sadly, we have vandalism. We have to shut it down until it gets cleaned. We don't want anyone seeing the vandalism because that becomes contagious and they start writing more. But really, I mean, there are things that I'm not proud of as an administrator at Woburn High School, such as, vaping in the bathroom. It's a real problem. When you go in there and you look and there's 10 males in the bathroom and there's 3 stalls, nothing good's going on there. So we have to, we try and get in the hallways, but there's 3 assistant principals in 36 bathrooms, and we have other things going on. So sometimes we have to lock it because of safety issues, but I would love to have the bathrooms monitored, but we don't have 36 staff to watch the bathroom 7 periods a day. That is, if I did the math, like 270 teachers a day. Near impossible. So it's a problem, statewide problem. And I'm sorry, Megan. But the bathroom down the main office is always open. It's a gender-free bathroom. I think that was our last question, but yeah. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Our third candidate is joining us. Dan Rasanen is walking up on stage. And again, just a reminder, if you don't have a feedback form, they're available in the back, and when you exit, there'll be places for you to drop those off. At this time, let me introduce Dan Rasanen.
Can you share about yourself and why you're interested in being the next principal of Woburn Memorial High School?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Apparently, I'm all that stands between you and home, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. I've been talking a lot today, so a little bit about myself. I'm in my 13th year at Lawrence. I was an English teacher there for 5 years, and then I started an at-risk program as part of the administrative team at Lawrence High School, and then transitioned that to a small alternative school where I've been the principal for the past 6 years, so past 8 years in school leadership. And the thing that has impressed me about Woburn, and it really draws me to Woburn as a community and Woburn High School in particular, is the mission and the vision of being a progressive, innovative school district is out there and it's public, but everybody I've talked to through my interview last week and through talking to people today, there's such a willingness to talk about the things that need to be changed and areas that people want to grow in, and a willingness to confront things and name them and change them and improve them. And the sense of pride in the community and the love for the community that comes through in that, people want what's best for something they care about. And I've been really impressed by, I think, just the desire to do what's best for kids in the time that I've been able to get to know Woburn a little bit better. And it's something that has really, really continued to draw me towards Woburn as a community, and I think Woburn High School in general.
Can you tell a story or stories about how you successfully engaged and supported high-need students both in and out of school?
Sure. So my entire career has been based on working with high-need students. Lawrence has a population that is heavily high needs, and my school works with students that are, considered behaviorally challenging, whether it's, attendance issues. And so the things that we've been able to do in order to do that are, I think really about not focusing on existing systems or this is what school looks like, but about focusing on what a student needs. So when a student comes in, they might have different needs than the other students that might be in front of us. So we need to look at, okay, are the needs, whether it's an ML or special education, or there are attendance issues, or there are mental health issues, or trauma, or all of the above. Schools need to have supports in place, but also have the expectations that kids are going to succeed in spite of challenges. And in my school, for the past 8 years, we've graduated 100% of our kids, not always within 4 years, but we've graduated 100% of our kids. And it's because of the flexible structure that we've adapted that allow us to do that. And I look at schools as places that should be accommodating to what kids need, not having kids bend to what schools currently exist as. So, when it comes to being flexible and being able to change to meet whether it's high needs learners or gifted and talented learners, or whether students are not coming to school or they're disengaged or they're not being challenged, whatever the case may be, I think schools have a responsibility to work with everyone that walks through the door, no matter what it takes.
Specifically, how do you engage with marginalized families to support their students?
One of the things that we do is we go to them. I think the traditional model of having report card night, throwing the doors open, and then wondering where all the parents are is a little bit outdated. It doesn't work. So we do a lot of community outreach. I think that's important. So doing a lot of home visits, going out to people's houses and getting to know individual families as individuals, not as just a group of people that may not be engaged with school, because there could be a whole bunch of different circumstances that might be preventing someone from coming to school for report card night, for parent-teacher conferences, whatever the case may be. So I think relationships are crucial with parents and families and guardians and caregivers, and if relationships aren't happening on the school's terms, it's the school's responsibility to then engage those families however you can. So for us, what that means is doing a lot of outreach, doing a lot of fact-finding, like, all right, so we want to build a relationship. What does that look like from the family? What does that look like on your terms? Can we set up a meeting out in the community? Is there another time that you are available to come in? Can we go to you? So just being really flexible and really proactive about seeking out those relationships and not just throwing doors open and saying, well, we had, academic night and nobody came, so we tried, and that's the end of it.
What does a safe learning environment look like?
A safe learning environment looks like a place where kids are comfortable in taking academic risks, and where a teacher is comfortable in getting some pushback from students and questioning around why you're learning what you're learning, and they understand and have an answer to that. And a safe learning environment looks like an environment where students are doing most of the work, because that means that they are engaged, they are talking to each other, they are questioning, they are reading, they are writing, and the focus is on a culture of achievement and a sense of pride in accomplishing difficult tasks and difficult objectives, and not just on doing work because someone says to do work. And it's a culture where differences are acknowledged and accepted and learned about, and a culture of respect is built purposefully through from day one of the school year to the end of the school year.
What would you say high quality instruction looks like?
I think it goes back to a little bit to what I said, where it's instruction that is providing an authentic deep learning experience for students, that has purpose, that has meaning, that's rigorous. And when I use the term rigor, I don't mean just more. I mean that's high order thinking that requires a lot more depth of knowledge, a lot more nuance, where the students are the ones that are engaged. When you walk into a room, you can see that. You know, the desks may not be in rows, may not be silent, but you can see learning happening, and you can see thinking happening.
Can you describe what you look for when hiring staff at your school?
I look for a couple things. I look for cultural competency, because our student population is right now 100% Latino, and I think it's important that a staff reflect the student body. And so I look for a staff that reflects what our students look like. And I look for a staff that understands cultural differences and understands how to build relationships with students, and not just build relationships and be friends with students, but build relationships in terms of being able to hold students accountable and expect a lot from them and maintain relationships and boundaries when students sometimes don't live up to those relationships. And the other thing I think is really important is the desire to continually improve and grow and work on improving practices to do what's best for students.
How do you shift a climate towards a more positive culture for both students and staff members?
Yeah, this is something that's come up quite a bit. And I think the first thing is to understand if a culture isn't where people want it to be, the first step is to understand why. I can't sit here and say I have an answer to that because I'm not part of this community. Hopefully I'll have the honor of being so, but to shift a culture forward, you need to understand why it got to a place where you want it to move forward in the first place. And then I think specifically towards Woburn, there is so much, I keep hearing the phrase Tanner pride all day, and there's so much of that. I think that's a really big area to leverage in terms of moving that culture forward and just gathering input from everybody who wants to be part of that work and saying, okay, we know there are areas of growth, there are things we need to improve on. What are some things we can do to move forward? What does success look like? What does achievement look like? And what are some action steps we need to do to get there? I see my role in that more as a facilitator and building bridges between stakeholders rather than just, from sitting in an office somewhere saying, you need to have better morale or you're in big trouble, because it's not going to do much good. Okay, that was quick.
So we have time for audience questions, or if there's anything that you want to add at this point, up to you.
No, I don't think so. I would just be really curious to hear if anybody wants to know about me. I see a hand going up, so yeah, fire away. I've been peppered all day, so.
Hi, can you just tell us a little bit more about your professional educational background?
Sure. So my undergrad is from Southern New Hampshire University. I majored in economics and finance. I thought when I was 18 years old I was going to be a business guy, and then after I graduated I spent a lot of years in a cubicle moving numbers from a spreadsheet to a PowerPoint and back, and realized I didn't love that. So when I was about 29 years old, I decided I wanted to do something that did somebody some good. So I took my teacher certification and became an English teacher at Lawrence High School, enrolled in a master's program. So I have my master's in education leadership from AIC, and in my educational journey, I went through an ESL certificate program through UMass Lowell. I've gone through a certificate program through Lesley University on the impacts of trauma on learning that I do some adjunct work with, and I'm currently in a Boston College Lynch Leadership Academy leadership program now. Sure.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about the size and the type of population at the school you're at now?
Yep. So about 8 years ago, when Lawrence is a receivership district taken over by the state, about 8 years ago when the high school was being redesigned, I was asked to start a program for at-risk ninth graders. So I became an administrator at Lawrence High School for the ninth grade as part of this redesign process. So I spent about 2 years as a school director, that was my title, and I grew that program from part of ninth grade to part of Lawrence High School campus. So I spent 2 years as an administrator at Lawrence High School. There's about 3,000 kids, and then we moved off campus, and currently our school has about 150 kids and about 25 staff.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Hi. As a school counselor, I really love your model. What I'd like to ask is how would that translate to a building this size? It sounds like you had a devoted budget for a specific population of students. That would be really different here. Just curious about how you would adapt that model to a school this size and with this many staff, and with not a devoted budget to the resources that it sounds like you're able to utilize, which is awesome. Just wondering how you would do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I wish I had the budget that I feel like we need for our particularly challenging student group. We didn't, when I was building the school and going through that process, I didn't, we looked at it through a school design model. It wasn't through budgeting and resources really, and I think when it comes to how my experiences at a school that size would translate, I think the things that I prioritize, my leadership style is definitely one of collaboration and community input and innovation, and I think that's something that translates anywhere, and just staying focused on student outcomes regardless of what systems may or may not exist already. For example, in Lawrence, we use teacher leadership teams as a governing model for our schools, and they set budget priorities, they do a lot of the decision making at schools, and that's something I think would translate anywhere, because no matter whether it's and when I was at Lawrence, I was part of the leadership team at Lawrence High School, where there's 3,000 kids and hundreds of teachers, and the same structures were in place, and I think a budget reflects your priorities as a school, and I think it starts with what's our instructional vision, what's our vision as a school, and everything needs to align to that. The budget, but also the curriculum and the coaching of teachers and the leadership structure and the culture of the school. So everything needs to be aligned to that, and those are things that I think translate to any school environment. I could probably hear you, so if you want to just...
Well, I was going to say nice socks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
those
you.
are excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Try to get some pizzazz here and there.
Two questions. One's a quick
Sure.
one. Are you multilingual?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
Okay. And the next question is about restorative justice and restorative practices.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have experience in those areas, and do you have opinions on that subject?
Extensive experience. We have been primarily implementing restorative justice for about 8 years, and I was on the committee in Lawrence to rewrite the discipline code book through that lens, especially when the discipline code was changed at the state level, and based on the suspensions that have been occurring. I'm a big believer in it, but it has to start with adult mindsets, and it's a learning process first. I can't come in and say, tomorrow we are going to start doing restorative justice, and then all of a sudden it's going to work. I think Restorative justice tier 1 is all about building a strong community that can withstand conflict and harm and, be able to process the repair that it takes for those things. So a lot of the restorative justice work that we've done, and I do trainings at other schools and we do a lot at our school, but it starts with, first I think, teaching people, students and adults and parents what it is and what it isn't, because it doesn't just replace other top-down consequences. If there's a conflict between students, I could come in and say, okay, you're both suspended. It doesn't address the conflict. It doesn't repair the harm that's occurred between the students or the learning community or anything, and then when they come back to school, then it still exists. So I'm a big believer in it, but I also think that I think change in general, it can't be forced, and it has to be done with people, not to people. So there's a big learning curve that needs to come into play before something like that can be done I think in any community. You're welcome.
Hi, thank you for coming out tonight.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Siobhan Karn. I have a couple of kids at Woburn High School. So one of our rubrics here is about vision, and I'd like to hear from you, if you came to Woburn, what would your vision be as the leader at Woburn Memorial High School?
Yeah. Would you ding me on the rubric if I don't have an answer? And I say that because I don't know the community well enough to sit here and say, here's exactly what our vision needs to be. I would need to do a lot of listening and a lot of talking to a lot of different people to really understand what's important to the community. I have a philosophy of education where I think, educational experiences for kids should be authentic and engaging and, really push thinking. But I don't think any leader can impose a vision. I think you're not going to get buy-in. You're not going to get systemic change if systemic change is needed. So thinking back to, what I talked a lot about today, that teacher leadership team structure, and what that looks like at our school and schools in Lawrence is it's the principal and the union rep and basically elected members of teachers from different departments and non-academic staff. They're the ones that, that group is the one that would set that vision with feedback from everybody that we could possibly listen to. Because I think to have a vision, it needs to match what a community wants. And the sense that I'm getting from my time here is that people want what's best for kids. They want to see kids achieve and take pride in their accomplishments and, really do well at high levels. But it's important to really understand what that looks like and what that looks like in a classroom. And, so I can't say, here's exactly what my vision would be, because I'm not someone who comes in and says, this is your vision and this is exactly what you're going to do. I think it would be one of the first things I would do, because I think that is helpful to drive the work forward, to have everybody on board towards, all right, this is our goal. When things get hard, when we need to have uncomfortable conversations, this is what we are working towards. I think it's really important to have vision, but it would be a much larger conversation around what do we want Woburn High School to look like, and what are the best outcomes that we want for our students.
This is called wait time. Or dinner time. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hi there. Interviewing is an opportunity to really showcase your strengths and tell us a lot about, what you've done previously. This might be a weird question, but what would your critics say about you?
That's a good question. That I rush into changes and decisions too quick, and which is why I am thankful for that teacher leadership team, because like I call them my brakes a lot, because I'm someone who will see things, and if things aren't producing outcomes that we want them to, then my philosophy is like, why are we going to wait to do something about it? So I'll go into our teacher leadership team meetings, or whether it's a meeting with student council or like a school leadership team, which has parents and students on it, and I'll say, hey, let's do this. And they'll say, that is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. Or I'll say, hey, let's do this next week. And they'll say, that is also the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. So I try to be really conscious of my own blind spots, and my sort of appetite for, or my comfort level with change is probably a lot more than other people's. And so I think building a culture where it's okay to push back, it's okay to give feedback, it's okay to be measured in your approach, and having structures where those conversations are okay is really important. Because I don't know, like, I don't want to be the one that forces change, and that's what people would say is, I might rush into something that I think needs to be fixed. So knowing that about myself, I don't want to do that. So I need people who will tell me, like, hey, knock it off.
Well, seeing no more hands, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you all for coming tonight. And again, a reminder to drop off your feedback in the back, and enjoy the evening.